Welcome to Conveyancing Matters, in which we talk about the November 2023 conveyancing news. Welcome to Conveyancing Matters with Lorraine and Stuart. Join us for a chat about all things property. So, hello Stu. Conveyancing Matters November 2023 news already. Can you believe it?
I know, the year's running away, isn't it? Almost Christmas.
Almost gone. Almost gone. But we had a bit of a shindig and it went well.
Yeah, no, it's been we've had a good month, haven't we? In terms of sort of news, I think the first thing to talk about is Conveyancing Matters Live.
Yeah.
So we had our event in Shoreditch at the Hoxton 7 on I think it was the 8th of November.
Yeah.
Seems ages ago already. And yeah, we had a good turnout, and we really want to say thank you for everybody that came and sort of partook in the discussion that we had about sort of general disasters within conveyancing and, you know, how we sort of got over those. So I think everybody had a good night, didn't they?
Yeah, I think they did. It was very kind of everyone to come, and very kind of Gavin and the Search Bureau to sponsor the evening. So yeah, really good time. And well, we're going to get on the merry-go-round and do it again, Stu.
Yeah, of course. So we'll have our sort of normal events planned for next year, so look out for those. But we're also going to be doing a new one in Birmingham in February, I think it is.
Yes, it is. So if everybody watches out for that, and our subscribers, our annual subscribers can attend for free. So our annual subscribers, just keep your eye out for the emails, because we'll let you know. But as I say, if anybody does want to get an annual subscription, they can go to the live events for free. Remember, just £40 per year for an individual.
Not per month, per year.
Exactly, per year, and £150 per year for a firm. So as well as getting monthly CPD content, other content, and free entry to the Conveyancing Matters live events, what we decided to do, because we always have, we said we'd do prize draws for our subscribers, Stu. So we thought our lovely annual subscribers can have a pizza on us. So anybody who subscribes before the 15th of December can be in a prize draw to win a £100 Pizza Express voucher, which we will send to the winning subscriber before Christmas. So they can have that. So if you're not a subscriber and you'd like to be, as well as getting CPD, you could get pizza all over your fingers before Christmas by subscribing, so that you can be in our prize draw. So we thought that would just be a nice little thing to do before Christmas, Stu.
Yes, yeah, change from the turkey.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So we've just done a sort of separate chat, which we will have put out on the cyber attack that was announced.
Yeah, so probably the biggest news, unfortunately, this month has been that, you know, the cyber attack. It was, you know, reported that possibly 80 to 100 firms were affected. There were some, you know, bulletins that went out from various sources naming some of those firms that were affected, which is, you know, really unfortunate. And, you know, we do have a lot of empathy for them. But it is getting scary, isn't it? You know, everyone's now a target. This is 2 years after the, you know, the big fraud that another big firm or firms suffered only, you know, 2 years ago. I can't believe that. And we're in the same boat, maybe.
Yeah, absolutely. But the CLC have put out a fairly sort of short announcement. They're your regulators, Stu. What did they say?
So basically, yeah, the outage was caused by a cyber incident, and, you know, everyone's working closely. I think it's a forensic firm to help with the investigation and assist us in restoring the service. Excuse me. So I think the CLC in particular were, yeah, mindful of keeping all their clients informed as to what was happening. And I think everyone's got to be mindful that, you know, we've got to advise our clients that are affected as well. So it's a case of making sure that everyone's, you know, talking to their clients, making sure that they understand the terms of the contract, whilst being mindful that obviously, you know, this unfortunate circumstance has arisen.
Yeah, absolutely. And the CLC have said, you know, affected firms should be obviously doing all the regulatory things that they need to do. But what the CLC have said, and I think quite useful resources, have sort of advised firms to look at the their cybercrime and fraud toolkit on their website, which of course would be something that's available, you know, anybody can go and have a look at.
Yeah.
So you know, that might be a useful resource, but certainly affected firms might want to be scuttling off and having a look at it. So our regulators seem to be you know, swilling about and coming out with quite a lot at the moment, Stu. And I mean, I thought just because of the themes that came out of it, really. I mean, we mentioned a couple of news editions ago the CLC's 2023 risk agenda. Well, the SRA has put out its 2022-23 annual report. And I thought there were some quite sort of interesting headline points to come out of it, Stu. Really, again, just sort of more, you know, of more general relevance for sort of firms, and the fact that, frankly, you know, AML and complying with AML regulatory requirements clearly continues to be a challenge. This was SRA regulated firms, but I have no doubt that CLC regulated firms are probably in a similar boat. So the SRA reported 249 money laundering reports. But they're the sorts of themes they picked up on. Firms failed to have proper AML policies and procedures. Extraordinarily, 60 reports involved a failure to carry out source of funds checks. Get this, failure to carry out risk assessments on clients and matters, failure to carry out a firm-wide risk assessment. And of course, this is the reports that they know about. So you wonder how many firms, you know, failure to carry out CDD. In half of the cases, the SRA report the most common area for breaches were firm-wide AML controls. Of the remaining outcomes, and here we go, the majority related to the buying and selling of property and poor customer due diligence, inadequate ID and verification, individual and corporate. I think the corporate's a challenge for firms. Failings in assessing and identifying the risk at client matter level, failure to perform, and this is one of your big things too, ongoing monitoring. You know, your theme has always been it's not definitely once in the transaction thing. Understanding source of funds, failure to apply enhanced CDD, I mean, this is startling. Failure to recognise work that brings firms into the scope of the regs in the first place. And their key themes are, you know, inadequate importance placed on having robust and compliant AML risk assessments, inadequate supervision or training of fee earners in this area, and having systems and processes that allow events to happen unchecked, such as receipt of funds or moving to the next stage rather than an automated stop being put to a transaction until CDD has been completed. So, you know, that's SRA firms, Stu, but I think very, very common themes. I mean, I also think what SRA regulated firms should bear in mind now is the SRA's mission creep, really. They've now got unlimited fining powers, and it was only reported yesterday that they have fined a firm in excess of £100,000, over £100,000 fine for a firm which self-reported no loss was suffered and no client harm was done.
I think that's almost a really important point to take out of that.
Yeah.
That they still got the fine.
And it was such a big fine. Now, I'm not saying for a nanosecond that firms shouldn't be complying with their AML requirements, but that seemed, and there's certainly a lot of commentary on it, that did seem, and the SRA, to be fair to them, have given reasons for their you know, level of fine, and if anybody wants to go and, you know, Google it and look it up, they can. But that still did seem a very, very high fine for, and it's based now on the turnover of the firm. For an event where, as I say, the firm self-reported, you know, they've put policies in place, you know, reaffirmed their policies, say no loss, no client loss, you know, no harm, and yet 100k fine. So firms need to be watching out.
The CLC also spoke about this at their latest roadshow as well. And I think maybe previously we tried to make a distinction, particularly here, between ID and AML, try to separate the two subjects, but AML now is almost becoming maybe like a kind of 3-4 tiered approach, isn't it? You know, I think you've got proof of funds, source of funds, and source of wealth, and the three are kind of are separate topics. And until people understand and can get their head round that we're talking about three separate things here, it's very difficult. I do have sympathy for conveyancers, because this now is taking up such a large part of the overall process. It's incredible. The ID check is minimal in comparison to checking the monies, and it's so difficult when people save up monies over the course of a long period of time, rather than there being that magic bit of paper that says they sold a property 2 years ago. They're the easy ones, aren't they? So I do have sympathy, but everyone needs to really, really, really focus at the moment, because it's the SRA and the CLC have it at the top of their agendas, don't they?
Yeah, they do. But I mean, at the end of the day, firms need to, do their firm-wide risk assessments and just assess the risk and consider, are we prepared to do any work on a matter or confirm the retainer until the source of funds and source of wealth checks are all concluded? Lots of firms have said to me in courses, I completely understand the view, well, that might cause a delay with progressing the transaction. Yes, it might. The client also needs to understand that it's the ball's in their court until such time as they've satisfied the firm. But the reality is, if the firm is not satisfied, and your example of somebody who has amassed funds over a period of years, well, if that doesn't fit within the firm's risk profile and the client can't convince the firm as to the source of those funds, the firm, should walk away and say, you've not satisfied us, you've not got over the first hurdle, you haven't passed go, and we're not going to commence this transaction, not continue, we're not going to commence the transaction. And that is a risk assessment for firms to do. It's a difficult risk assessment. I'm not diminishing that. And when matters, transactions, when work becomes a bit more difficult to find, as firms are discovering now, when they're more likely to cut corners. But I think it's a straightforward point, actually. If you're going to continue to work and you find out just before exchange that your client hasn't convinced you about the source of their funds and the source of their wealth, well, it's a bit too late.
No, it's definitely too late.
You've not met your regulatory requirements, but that is an assessment of risk for firms to carry out. And what I object to strongly about the regime as a whole is, you and I are many marvellous things, Stu, but accountants we're not. And forensic accountants we're not. And as you say, unless somebody says, well, here's the letter from Blogs and Co, evidencing that I inherited 100 grand from my nan, then there can be quite considerable financial analysis, and I don't particularly hold I don't hold myself out as qualified to undertake that analysis, and I'm sure the majority of conveyancers don't, but it gets right on my nerves, I have to say, actually.
You're absolutely spot on, and we even now here have a checklist when it comes to reviewing a bank statement, what you should be looking out for, because sort of knowing your client kind of as used to be a bit more of a buzzword than I think it is now. And we're so focused on the funds, but actually reviewing that bank statement and understanding the type of person that you're acting for is fundamental to what you're doing. If you've got a client, they're 18 years of age and they work somewhere and they're buying for work at Tesco's, they're buying for 1.1 million, profiling that client and profiling the risk at the onset of a transaction, and again, isn't something that's really a one-off job, is it? It's a moving part, unfortunately.
It absolutely is. It absolutely is. Well, maybe it's time.
I think it's almost getting to the point now that the work you do now, investigating your client and their source of money, is getting comparable to looking at the property.
Yes.
Outrageous. But
and firms ought to be thinking about that. And now that they've got to put their fees on their website, if the firm does decide, for example, no, we're not going to let you go past go until we're satisfied on the money, and plenty of firms do have that rule, stick it on your website, make it clear, stick it in your confirmatory emails. And some firms might say, well, we won't get the work if we do that. Well, frankly, that might not be work you want anyway.
I think there's also maybe a bit of disparity when it comes to what we charge for that as well. Insofar as a lot of these sort of automatic providers, or maybe panels that provide firms of work, they make a charge for this, which is very, very minimal. And I think that outside of the industry, not everyone's completely aware of the work that you need to do regarding AML. And certainly now we make a separate charge for it. There's checking ID, which is one charge, but there's investigating the AML side of things, which is completely different. And as a comparable in terms of monies, it's way more. I think firms are quite entitled to charge a fee for that.
Yeah, absolutely, and
a decent one.
Well, we could talk about that probably all day between us, Stu, but we ought to move on. Yep. So what's this? What have CLC put out about review solicitors? The CLC, interestingly, have put out something about this review outfit. So this is direct from the CLC. So what have they had to say?
That's it. So I think historically it was a site where solicitors could go on there and again, reviews were logged, but now it's open to CLC firms as well. So those that in the past may have concentrated on your Google reviews and your Trustpilots, you've now got another avenue that you can go to and a company that you can deal with. So, it's up to you whether you want to sort of go on these kind of comparison type websites, but certainly it's a good way of advertising the good reviews that you get.
Yeah, well, what the CLC have said, which I think is quite interesting, they put out this piece of news. A number of, and I quote directly from the CLC, a number of CLC regulated practices have contacted the CLC following approaches from review solicitors. Those practices have inferred that the CLC is working with the site, or that CLC firms are required to join the site. And the CLC have gone on to say, and I quote, the CLC does not require practices to work with any particular comparison website, though we believe they can be a good way to reach potential clients.
Yeah.
And they're actually say they're going to be doing more work on sort of comparison websites.
Yeah, I mean, just from my own pure personal experience, we've been approached by review solicitors and they didn't cast any innuendo that it was compulsory or that they were working with a CLC or anything like that. So wouldn't be my experience, but I think firms can make their own decision whether it's a good thing and a good fit for them to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I just thought it was interesting that the CLC, as the regulator, felt the need to put that piece of news out only a couple of weeks ago. So, well, I'm just really following on, Stu, from our comment in October's Conveyancing Matters news. Just conveyancers need to sort of keep a weather eye on the leasehold and freehold reform bill, only mentioned as recently as the King's speech, of course, on the 7th of November. But the bill has started its progress to become law. It's on its second reading. And, our lovely viewers will remember that it's a bill to amend the right of tenants under long residential leases to acquire freeholds of their houses, to extend leases of houses or flat collectively and franchise, give tenants the right to reduce the rent payable under their leases, regulate charges and costs payable by regular residential tenants, and to regulate estate management and estate rent charges, something on rent charges as well. It's got its second reading. Conveyancers have got enough on their plate. What I've been saying to the people I've been teaching more recently, Stu, there's a lot for conveyancers to grasp when it hits the statute book. But, and I tend to say to firms, look, don't worry too much about stuff until it does hit the statute book. But I think because it's potentially some quite big changes, firms do perhaps need to be thinking about whether they should put, a paragraph in their current reports to sort of warn clients now that these changes are sort of proposed, because, of course, just because it's in a bill doesn't mean that's what the bill will end up looking like, of course. Because, of course, if a client completes a purchase a few days or weeks before the bill becomes law and their position is materially worse than it would have been if they'd waited, then I'm afraid the conveyancer is going to get a kicking. So my general advice to conveyancers is to review your standard leasehold reports and really just maybe think about putting a paragraph in, really to say to clients, look, these changes are coming, we don't know what they're going to be, we haven't got a crystal ball, lots of love, firm. So it's really to alert clients, but actually there's a bit of back covering in there as far as I'm concerned.
Interesting the speed at which this is moving, isn't it? And it's interesting that you've got this detail, yet everyone's fixated on abolishing leaseholds, or actually, the detail such as this, it's a shame more people aren't talking about this, rather than using leaseholds as a generic term, But...
Well, I think the snag is, though, I sound like a broken record on this, Stu, but I think they've made such an absolute hash of the Building Safety Act. They haven't asked conveyancers at the coalface whether it would work. There's no evidence that they've done this with the current leasehold and freehold reform bill. So we could end up with, two massively terribly drafted statutes that we're left to unpick. So I'll wait and see. Land Registry Practice Guide 50 has been updated, and people might say, so what? Well, it's on a big topic, actually, requisition and cancellation procedures. And firms might want to check, if they don't know already, Section 2 has been amended to include additional ways to reply to recs from the Land Reg. And what I thought it would just be worth mentioning, apart from telling firms to go and look it up, is that actually we will cover sort of requisitions in a future Conveyancing Matters subscriber webinar, because there's a lot, I think, to talk about there. So if you want to see a webinar in the coming months on requisitions, land registry requisitions, and avoiding them, then best you subscribe. www.conveyancing-matters.co.uk. So, Stu, the autumn statement.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. We were sort of, would I use the right word, excited for the autumn statement, a bated breath as to whether there was going to be any amendments to stamp duty, possible stamp duty holiday, which was kind of put out in the press. So I think conveyancers were quite keen this year to monitor what was going to happen. But lo and behold, nothing. There wasn't really much in there, was there? So from a conveyancing point of view, directly, nothing, which is... I would have said, is it a shame? Probably not.
I don't know.
The most to take out of it, I think, is possibly the economic kind of situation, and the fact that next year looks like it's going to be a bit more rosy, and there hopefully the market won't be as affected. But other than that, really, not much to say on the matter, is there?
Well, not really, but having said that, you've done your your LinkedIn piece. So if anybody wants to know the view of Stu, then they can go and look at that. But actually, one thing I wanted to mention in brief, Property Lawyers Action Group has been set up, which I just think is quite interesting. It's basically really, I think, in the light of the sort of, the drive to consumerization of the conveyancing process, this action group has been set up. And it says it's a group of lawyers drawn from across the profession, seeks to promote the idea of practicing law in a modern manner by improving access to the professionalism of its members, not crude consumerism. It is free. They've got a LinkedIn page if anybody's interested, but I'm not affiliated to it. I just thought it would be worth mentioning that if property lawyers do feel strongly about, frankly, a lot of the mess that we appear to be in at the moment, well, the Property Lawyers Action Group has been set up, and people who are interested might want to go and have a look at it. But maybe to conclude then, Stu, and perhaps it's interesting to maybe sort of finish where we almost started, on the dreaded old fraud. Something of an irony that 2 weeks ago was Fraud Awareness Week.
Fraud Awareness Week. You couldn't write it, could you?
No. It's not funny, really, but
no, it's not funny in the slightest. But the irony of it all. But yeah, it was Fraud Awareness Week, and actually rowing into that, the Land Registry have recently put out a blog on keeping your properties safe, or your clients' properties safe, and we all now, I think, probably recommend Property Alert to our clients. We certainly should be letting them know that option is there for them to register their properties. I think it's up to 10.
Yes, it's free. I always say firms shouldn't be doing it, though. Firms should just tell their clients about it.
They should, but also they should be very careful in what they explain to the client, because I've seen a few that actually have wrongly detailed what the Property Alerts does. So you've got to be very careful if you're actually advising a client to do something that you've fully explained exactly.
Well, or why can't firms just do a simple thing and say the Land Registry have got a Property Alert service? Here's the link. Go and look at it.
Yeah.
And you're not misrepresenting, or cut and paste from the website. It's Crown copyright. I mean, it's not rocket science, is it?
No. No, I think you've got to let you've got to let your client know that it's there, because if you didn't, then obviously there was a problem. Maybe it's another topic to discuss another day, fraud in general, as we've obviously got ID restrictions that have kind of grown and grown and grown. I'm still not so sure what I think about ID restrictions, in that I'm not quite sure how it necessarily prevents a fraud, which, again, I think we've got to be so careful the way we word things. Prevent fraud. Well, it doesn't really, does it?
No,
Might be a deterrent. Might be a deterrent.
I agree. The language around this, the most that we can do is mitigate the risk of fraud.
Of course.
We can lessen the risk, hopefully. You can never eliminate it. I just think it's nonsense to talk about preventing. You're absolutely right. You've got to focus on the language. And that's what firms have got to do. What can the firm do? Can you stop a client being the subject of fraud? No. What you can do is make suggestions to help for clients lessen the risk of being caught.
Well, I've been working closely with a company called Title Guardian. We've been recommending that platform to our clients, and it's interesting when you talk to those guys, because their challenge is that they will notify the client about a potential fraud, not necessarily prevent it, because of course the client's got to action the fact that something may happen. But that's I would strongly recommend lawyers have a look at that platform, because we recommended it now for probably the last 2 to 3 months, and we've actually had a couple of potential frauds possibly stopped. Obviously we don't know whether they would have come to fruition, but there were dealings that came up, and also admin errors. For a typical example, and just to put a bit of description into it, this platform will actually notify you as a property owner if your property appears on selling platforms like Rightmove, for example. So we had one client that all of a sudden panicked, rings up and says, "Oh my God, I've got a notification that my property's up for sale." It just transpired that the estate agent had wrongly listed the wrong property.
Well, that's interesting, isn't it, Stu? Because I remember you saying to me quite a while ago that a fraud that one of your clients had tried to perpetrate was they had sort of set up a bogus estate agent name.
Yes.
So that sort of that all does tie in, doesn't it?
Yes. And again, you must have known I was going to talk about this, because I also had the pleasure of meeting Mike Hall. Obviously unfortunate circumstances. So Mike is the vicar that actually had his property in Luton taken away.
The vicar that lost his house.
The vicar that lost his house. He actually got his house back in terms of the title. I think it was around about 2 weeks ago. So mid-November, he is now the registered proprietor.
Gosh, well, when did that first kick off, Stu?
I think it's 2 years.
2 years. So it's taken him 2 years to actually get the title back in his name.
Hasn't been compensated in any way, shape, or form yet. But he's got further problems in that he's actually got tenants in the property that need to be evicted as well.
Oh my word.
In fact, he had tenants and now he's got squatters. So it's been a real nightmare for
oh my word. So you've so we've got the Stu's chat with Mike Hall coming up, which I think will be really interesting. We'll put that out in the next couple of weeks.
On that one, there were bogus estate agents involved in that too.
Well, there we go. So
and again, maybe a little bit of a tip, because we had a client that I say was involved in a fraud, suffered, maybe the victim of a fraud, where there was a fraudulent estate agent. We now, when we do our sort of lawyer checks, we also do our third party checks, and we actually look at the estate agent involved, all part of our kind of initial risk assessment to make sure that they've got properties for sale on Rightmove and they do exist.
But again, that's the problem with this compliance burden, isn't it?
Yeah. Where do you draw the line?
That the estate agent exists. I mean, it's extraordinary, isn't it?
It is extraordinary, but
I mean, people look at me gone out when I sort of say to them, sort of a similar thing in a way, that there are fraudulent EWS1 certificates out there, and ask firms, are you checking who signed the certificate? If they've said it's a property that needs work, is the signatory of the higher qualification required by the RICS? Have you checked the organisation that
it's incredible,
and have you checked that they've got sufficient indemnity insurance in place to cover giving EWS1 certificates? And people just look at me gone out, but what else can we do?
Now, I had a lawyer say to me, "What a load of nonsense!" When I told him that about checking the estate agent. But look, as far as we're concerned, we've had it come up twice where there's been an estate agent. We all know that you could form an estate agent in theory. There's no regulation. We could just knock one up tomorrow. We could sell properties, and of course, the invention of maybe these EXP and Keller Williams type estate agents as well. But a quick check on Rightmove and Zoopla identifies that yes, they have got other properties on there, and they are carrying out that role. So you know, for us, it's just an extension of what we do. We would normally look on Rightmove anyway to actually have a look at the property and whatnot. So it's not too onerous to include that in your kind of
no, but it's just, you know,
the extent that you have to go to is outrageous. But let's face it, you do not want to be acting for another Mike Call, do you?
No, exactly.
In any way, shape, or form.
Well, that's a really good place to end the November 23 news, Stu. So thanks for that. So we'll really look forward to your Mike Hall exclusive chat, the vicar who lost his house with Stu. Fantastic. Well, look, Stu, I'll see you really soon, and thanks for that. And well, have a good few days until I see you again.
You too. Take care.
Take care.